What's up, MFFL'S? Harrison Graham and Jeffrey Cooperstein here with you as we got a lot of Mavericks rumors to get into. Reports from Tim MacMahon as he dropped another episode of Howdy Partners with ESPN that Josh Green and Jaden Hardy are desired trade pieces around the league. Coop, will one of these guys get dealt? That's what we're going to talk about on today's show.
Yeah, this is kind of the first time we've really heard rumblings about Jaden Hardy and Josh Green being involved in trade talks. Now, I'm not sure the Mavs are super desirable to want to trade those guys, but it's worth note that they're being talked about as possible trade pieces for guys that the Mavs could acquire here in the future.
Absolutely. There's some other good stuff from this podcast as well. We're going to save that for a future episode, so subscribe and turn on those notifications. Okay, here's Tim MacMahon on Josh Green. He says, when teams call the Mavericks or Mavericks call teams, the name that comes up early in these talks are Josh Green and Jaden Hardy. Those are the names other teams look at as far as being attractive trade pieces. Josh Green is going to have a market. I think the full mid-level is going to be the floor for him, talking about a future contract. If the Mavericks don't see him as a starting caliber small forward, then I think it does make sense to move him in a trade because there are other franchises who do. Now, Coop, the Mavs have been hesitant to move Josh Green, but I do think it's notable that they went all in on Matisse Thybulle, who plays a similar position, similar type of player, 3 and D with the 3-shot coming along, very similar to Josh Green there. Riddle me this. Had they gotten Thybulle, I think the door of trading Josh Green would be pretty open at this point because I think Thybulle would have had a good chance of starting for this team, which means maybe Green gets flipped in a deal for a center. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I do think that does show a glimpse that in the right situation, Josh Green could actually get a piece that gets traded.
Well, in this podcast as well, who he did with Brian Damaris flat out said that if the Mavs got Thybulle, he was their starting 3. So that would have relegated Josh Green to the bench once again and probably would have opened him up to even more trade possibilities. Now that they didn't acquire Thybulle, I still think Green is penciled in as that starting 3, but He's still a guy that could be traded, especially if he doesn't get off to the start that the Mavs would need him to.
And if nothing else, Coop, as you look at his career numbers here, and look, the splits do look good last year, but it's a bit misleading. He's not a high volume guy. If you're shooting 54% from the field and 40% from 3, you would think you're scoring more than 9 points per game. He doesn't shoot the ball that much. And I think, Coop, what this tells me more than anything is, one, they wanted to upgrade that spot. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, I think that was their number one priority in the offseason, even over a center, was upgrading the wing. They got Grant Williams, tried to get Thybulle, but struck out on him.
And 2, Coop, MacMahon made this point saying his floor is the mid-level exception, which whenever he's up for a deal is going to be $13, $14, maybe $15 million per year. They may not view him that way unless there's a major jump this year. So I think we should keep an eye on this as we get closer and closer to the season here. Josh Green could be a guy that's dealt, if not now, maybe at the trade deadline if they don't view him as a 4 for 60 guy, which is what it may cost to keep him long term.
Regardless of how the fans view him and regardless of our opinions of him, if the Mavs don't view him as a starter, then they need to trade him because his value will never be as high as it is right now.
Yeah, because look, if he has just an okay, let's say he does similar things to last year, 8 to 10 points, similar splits but low volume, then the consensus around the league is okay, he hasn't taken another step. He's improved each year so far, but if he doesn't take another step, then it's okay, what is he? His best role is probably as an energy bench guy on a contending team, whereas he's likely going to have to start for this team right now. So I'm kind of with you. If you move him to get a better wing starter, or if he's part of acquiring a high-level center, I think that's something you have got to consider if you're Dallas, especially if you're hesitant to give him a notable contract of $12+ million per year on a multi-year deal. So what do you guys think? Should the Mavs trade Josh Green, type T for trade or K for keep? Coop, I don't think we're trying to force him out of here, but
I'm not. Yeah, but if the opportunity presents itself and the Mavericks don't see him as a key piece of their future, I think you have to consider it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. T for trade or K for keep. Now, join the family here at Mavericks Today by Chat Sports. Like we said off the top, hit that subscribe button. We're going to have more analysis from this Tim MacMahon podcast he did with Brian Damaris, who's covered the Mavs for for a long time as well. More juice out of that, more on today's show, obviously. So subscribe, turn on the noties. Don't miss any of our videos. We've been plugging them out every single day for, I think, over a month now. So don't miss out as we continue our coverage. Okay, let's go to Jaden Hardy now, and who Coop really came on midway through the season, had a good rookie season. Would Dallas move on? He's looked pretty good in the Summer League, which we'll talk about as well. Stick with us. We'll talk Jaden Hardy also here. But pick up a Luka Doncic t-shirt, 25% off. Show Luka some love. The man just got engaged. Apparently he's been working hard this offseason in the weight room, the conditioning, the diet. Some news coming out on that. Chatsports.com/Doncic. Get 25% off and get yourself a Luka tee today. You look at Jaden Hardy's splits from last year. Played in 48 games. Obviously early in the year, wasn't really part of the rotation. But look, when he played pretty well. I mean, 9 points per game, 44% from the field, 40% from three. You could say similar things around Hardy. Obviously a different type of player. Like, you like the splits, but obviously low volume because he wasn't always in the rotation. But, Coop, we've seen in Summer League, he didn't have the most efficient second game, but he's just a flat-out attacker. I mean, he really is a skilled offensive player. Your pops, Chuck Cooperstein, said that he thinks he'll be the best sixth man the Mavs have had since Jason Terry. I know we've made that comp before, not necessarily in play styles, but in terms of impact. And look, he could score. You think he could be a 20-point guy in this league?
I've said that repeatedly over the last few times we've talked about Jaden Hardy. I really do think he's going to be like the next Jordan Clarkson, where he's just a flamethrower coming off the bench. I think he can play 30 minutes a game in this league, and he can be an efficient scorer. And I think at this point in time, I think he's more valuable than Josh Green because he has an NBA skill that he does at a very high level, and that's scoring the basketball. And you don't find 20-point-a-game scorers on trees. So I think Jaden Hardy is a guy that if he has another good season like the Mavs think and they need him to have, I think he's a guy that's less expendable than Josh Green at this point.
And that's what's pretty interesting, too. Like, if Dallas is hell-bent on improving on the wing or at center, like, I do think Josh Green's the player that they'd most likely move. Like, I don't think they're going to trade Jaden Hardy unless it's for a proven all-star. Like, if there's some trade out there that we have not discussed and has not been reported, rumored, that could be a possibility.
If the Mavs are in the Dame Lillard sweepstakes and they have to give up Jaden Hardy, you're doing it.
Yeah, or like if a Paul George really becomes available or something like that, maybe that door opens. But like for DeAndre Ayton, I'm not trading Jaden Hardy. Now,
I agree.
Would I maybe bend and trade Josh Green to get Ayton? I would consider that. But I think for Hardy, like, I got to see another year of this guy with the Mavericks. Like, I want to see another year and see what he can do because I think he does have all-star potential. I don't know if he'll reach that. I think at worst, he's a flamethrower off the bench. At best, he's a 20, 22-point scorer that could be playing in an all-star game.
Look, the Mavs got a real steal in Jaden Hardy at 37. I think coming out of high school, he was like the number 4 ranked player in his draft class. Obviously chose to go to the G League Ignite. He was getting first-round buzz throughout that whole season, but I think he had an up-and-down season with the Ignite, so his draft stock kind of fell, and the Mavs traded back into that second round to go get him. And at the time, everyone was like, wow, the Mavs made a good pick. The Mavs got a steal there at 37. And they obviously loved what they saw in Jaden Hardy from a potential standpoint. And so far, I think he's on that right track. Obviously, he still needs to develop. I would like to see him handle the ball a little bit more. I think he'll work with God Shamgod, who's the Mavs skills coach, a lot this offseason to try to tighten his handle up a little bit and make him more of a playmaker as well so he's able to spell Luka and Kyrie when they need it.
So if you guys had to just keep one long-term, who you keeping? I think if you listen to Coop and I, we're keeping Jaden Hardy. So type 3 if you want to keep Hardy. If you'd rather keep Josh Green long-term, type 8. Obviously, Green is a much more developed defensive player, so it's not like he's garbage. I mean, I like Josh Green, but I got to keep the guy who's got 20-point-per-game potential in this league, and I don't think Josh Green will ever get to that number, to be quite frank. So I'm going to type my 3. Type 8 if you want to keep Josh Green. All right, Coop, let's talk a little about the Summer League. Natural transition here, as obviously the Mavs have played 2 games. They play this afternoon here in a few hours.
Yes, 4:30 against the Golden State Warriors. NBA TV, I believe we can watch that on. So I'll come back here in a couple hours and give you guys a little update on what happened in the game. Tonight, again, I'm looking for more Derek Lively, looking for more Omax Prosper. Love how those guys have played in the first 2 games, especially Omax. I love his intensity on the defensive end. He just gets after it on every single play, and that's something the Mavs need. So I think if I had to pick one of the 2 rookies that's going to play more in the rotation this year, I think it's Omax. I think he plays right away.
And that's an interesting note. We'll just quickly mention this too in that MacMahon podcast. He thinks there's a real chance Lively spends a lot of time in the G League, at least early in the year. Now, will that be the case? I think it depends on a lot of things. One, is a Rashawn Holmes, Dwight Powell center pairing adequate? I mean, is that good enough? We'll see. Hopefully it is. Two, do you trade for a center? Obviously, if you go get a starting caliber center, then that really opens the door to put Lively down with the Legends for 20, 30 games if you want to, and to give him some minutes. And
they did this with Josh Green and Hardy as well a little bit last year. I think it'll be a situation where if the Mavericks have 2 days off in between games, they'll send Derek Lively down to go get some minutes in the G League and stuff like that. So they'll find minutes for him. Maybe not all at the NBA level, but he'll definitely have minutes to further his development.
And that's what he needs because he's very raw. And we've seen that in the Summer League, very up and down. The highs have been very high. He's blocked shots. He's a bit of disruptor in the paint defensively. He's had a couple nice rolls.
I like what I've seen.
Dude, he's a great rebounder. Like, that's one thing. There, late in that comeback against the Sixers, there was one missed free throw in particular where it bounced way up off the back rim. He just elevates over everybody and goes and grabs it. Physical rebound.
When you're a 7'1" athlete, that's kind of what you expect.
And the Mavs have not had that.
They have not had it since Tyson Chandler, and that's why the comps keep coming back to him. The Mavs obviously brought in Tyson Chandler to be a coach in this Summer League team and to mentor Derek Lively. So I like what I've seen so far. It's obviously very early in his NBA career, but there's a lot more to be seen from Lively.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch this afternoon and the rest of the way. And a little teaser, once the Summer League's over, we'll kind of rehash it all in one video, Summer League winners and losers, who stood out, who didn't. So check out the game today, 4:30 Central. Coop will have a recap short video tonight on the channel, so be on the lookout for that. Until tomorrow, we'll see you next time on Dallas Mavericks Today.